Welcome back to my garage. Friday last week I had a friend over with a couple of bikes and which we ran up on the dyno. And we got the numbers we were expecting. That flat track bike produced about 40 horsepower at the wheel. The drag bike produced 67 horsepower at the wheel. That was also expected with the supercharger and all that. So this pretty much confirms the dyno. There's nothing wrong with the dyno. I cleaned up the place a little bit, even though the engine is not ready. And I borrowed a selection of pipes from Håvard Johansen. Thank you, Håvard Johansen. For testing purposes, I promised not to modify anything, which means we'll have to lathe and weld up a little section for an adapter, because these are, I think they're 35 inner diameter and my spigot is a slight bit over 36. So, but this should, and I think this pipe would be, because here's my pipe. And you can see the difference. This is much longer. Well, not much, but it's longer. This should be tuned for like 14,000 RPM peak. And so a more normal pipe. So this will be really interesting to see how it performs with this pipe, even though there will be a slight longer section here than what's supposed to be. And also my exhaust duct is probably longer than the engines this pipe is meant for. But interesting. Before that, I've carefully checked my port timing. I made this tool to make absolutely sure my measurement wire is sitting perfectly parallel to the cylinder, and also double check that this is actually 45 degrees. So this is a 1.6 millimeter welding wire, and so this distance, the distance between where the piston is hitting and where the port floor or roof is hitting is 2.223 millimeters, and the numbers are in. So we're sitting at 203 degrees of duration on the exhaust port, which is, well, the problem is that the port was it was not supposed to, because the transfers all of them are sitting at 127 duration, 127 degrees of duration, and these numbers are wrong. The exhaust port were supposed to be lower with transfer durations like this, and also the A ports were meant to be a slight bit lower than the B ports. So one of the things is that this cylinder started off without the bridge in the middle of the exhaust port, because experimentations with 100% of bore exhaust port and a captive ring and all that stuff. And so it was sent off and a bridge got welded in, and then the roof was ground back around that bridge. And there might be, like, it might have been ground back a little bit too much, a slight bit too much. And also I snagged the ring in the port because I forgot to bevel the edge. And I beveled that edge after the fact, and it's still going strong and the plating has survived, but I might have ground off a little bit too much in the process, and so things aren't exactly what they're supposed to be. Like with now the exhaust port, the exhaust duration should probably be more like 195 or something with low transfer durations like this. The problem with this is that my exhaust port is now sitting higher in relation to the transfers than what it was supposed to be, and thereby my exhaust or my blowdown time area is higher in relation to the transfer area than what it's supposed to be. So at the moment we're severely transfer restricted, and that's not how you want things to be. You want things to be, because it's easy enough to add more transfer area, but blowdown area is without too much timing is what's hard to achieve. We're sitting at almost 33 horsepower in blowdown area now, and RPM capability of almost 25,000 RPM. The transfers are sitting at 24.5 horsepower and a RPM capability of 18, just over 18,000 RPM. And this is not how you want it to be. So really we would need to raise the transfers. And this is exactly the thing I wanted to avoid by making my own cylinder and having the port timing set. So I wouldn't go in there and fudge with my, because there's so little that will make a big difference. Like we're talking to bring these ports up to durations of, let's see here. So now the ports are 9.15 millimeters high. If I want to bring the STA numbers up to what I want, let's see. I'm getting close by raising the B and C transfers by 0.85 millimeters to 133 duration. And we're talking 27.5 horsepower capability of the transfers and like 19, almost 20,000 RPM and 28.8 for the blowdown and a little bit over 21,000 RPM. Still not how I want it. And another problem is how there's plugs in here now making the transfer angles different. This rear wall of the B ports, and that's eaten into my area. So the effective area of this port used to be larger. And I want to play with the angle here because now it's 90 degrees just straight across. And I want to open it up and see how much we can get away with. And this will give us more area. So it's not a good idea to grind the transfer roofs yet, because with this angle change we gain more effective area and thereby we don't need as high transfer ports and we'll retain more blowdown area. And it's a juggling act. But for now we'll just leave it as is. And there's still, like, the transfers should be able to support enough horsepower. But there's a big mismatch here, which is less than ideal. There's almost a 50% horsepower capability mismatch between the blowdown and the transfers, and in the wrong way. So the blowdown can support much more horsepower than the transfers as it sits now. And the reason why all the ports are the same height is the resolution of because this cylinder was metal 3D printed and this was cast by me. And I haven't thought about that, but the resolution of the laser sintering process seemed to be not enough to, because there's just should have been a slight difference between the A transfers and the B transfers, and there's not. They're pretty much all the same height, and that has to be the resolution of the printer. So gotta quit assuming things. Stop assuming things. Anyways, now that we know the RPM capability of the transfer ports are much lower than what they should have been, or what it should have been. And we know we can't raise the cylinder because then the exhaust duration will get too high and we'll definitely not get the resonance we want. We're gonna stick with this but try to make power at lower RPM. And there still could be a problem with short pipes and pulses colliding and shock waves and all that. But let's see how it performs at low RPM. It could be that it's just almost impossible to get a really short pipe to work. Or it could just be that now my transfers are the limiting factor and they can't produce power at the RPM we've been trying to produce power. So let's reassemble, put it into the frame and make up that adapter thing and test with a longer pipe. See what happens. We've got other pipes to try too, and they actually fit my spigot. Peak at around 13-14K. Now there's an extension here, that extension piece I made, and also the exhaust duct is probably longer than what this in the cylinder this pipe was intended for. So peak is probably, I think, lower. We'll see. This can strengthen our theory about a really short pipe having some destructive pulse action going on, like shock waves and stuff. But also strengthen the theory about running out of transfer area. Well, actually, I'm not sure. I don't think we're running out of transfer area. We should be able to produce much more power before we do that, even though RPM capability is lower than it should be at the moment. I'm gonna adjust the timing to a flat line 15 degrees because we don't know where the peak is in this pipe. Let's try 18 degrees. No success so far. It just revved less. Let's try 13 degrees and see what happens. I have a 30-degree peak at 6K just to have it rev easier below the power band. Let's try this one. It's actually a little bit shorter, even though it doesn't look like it, and much fatter. My hopes aren't that high for this one, but as we have it on hand, let's see what happens. Pretty much the same results, actually a little bit lower peak, even though maybe it is longer. I just measured it with a, we'll see later. So this is just pointless. Let's put my super short pipe back on, but now with this 25mm extension, and see what happens. This was a 15-degree flatline. Let's try 18, which will be the same as the runs you're you're seeing here, except for that extension. I'll take off that 25mm extension and then we'll do a few runs and see if we're back at the numbers we saw last time. We're pretty much back at the numbers we saw last time with this short pipe, which are the highest numbers we've had so far. So a little bit over 12 horsepower, between 12 and 12.5 horsepower at the wheel. It is weird how it starts. It seems like it's on its way to peak power when it just runs out of steam. It doesn't seem like peak power is supposed to sit here. And what I think is happening is what I was talking about earlier in the video. I think there's more than enough, the mismatch between blowdown and transfer area. I think that is our problem, because it should be a problem, because there's such a huge mismatch now. We'll just have to grind the transfers higher, grind them up to match the numbers. I think that's our next, and maybe there's no problem with the short pipe and the pulses, and like I was talking about last time. And it's just that the cylinder is, there's not enough time area, transfer time area at the RPM where it's supposed to make power. I gave a pretty bad explanation of this earlier in this video, I think. So let's try that again, but this time with a screen recording. So you can see how blowdown area can support 33 horsepower versus transfer port area, which can only support 24.5 horsepower. A ports were supposed to be 128 versus 127 now, and the B and C ports were supposed to be 130, and all of them are the same height, and that's probably because of the resolution of the metal 3D printer used. That's one thing. Another thing is how the layout of my cylinder is quite different now to what it was supposed to be, and actually how this looks is also different to how it was supposed to be, because you can see in the drawing here, and that's how it is in my cylinder now. There's some 3D printed inserts cutting these ducts off, having them 90 degrees to the bore here, as you see, like you see in the drawing, and this is stealing lots of area. And the reason I've done that is because these were not meant to be aimed as much towards the exhaust port as they are. This was pretty much the design intent, what I wanted things to look like, and it ended up like this because of a stupid mistake, which I never really realized. I kind of wrote off the cylinder as good and never thought about stuff like that after I had was finished designing it. And now you can see my transfer specific time area is up to almost 30 horsepower and a limit of 20,600 RPM. And blowdown is because we haven't changed the relation between, we haven't gained any more blowdown area and we haven't lost any either. We're still at 33 horsepower for blowdown. So if we bring the transfers up to the B and C transfers to 130 versus 127 duration. And now we have blowdown of almost 31 horsepower. So blowdown capable of supporting almost 31 horsepower. And transfers almost capable of supporting 32 horsepower. And this is a good match between the two. Go for a little less timing and have more blowdown area. But I don't think I'll be accurate enough with the grinder to make this happen. This means we'll have to 3D print a new insert for the cylinder, put that in there, and then raise the transfers 0.32 millimeters, which is, so that's all that's necessary, and plus that angle change here. So let's see what happens after that, or let's get to work and then let's see what happens. Here you can see those angle changing stuffers in place, aiming straight 90 degrees into the bore like this. There's actually a slight little hook at the end there, but not enough to really affect area. One, there, two. At the moment there's a crankcase stuffer, primary intake place taker thing sitting in there, and it's sitting like this, blocking the entrances of these ports. But I wonder, by not doing anything at all now, no grinding, no anything, this should gain us lots of transfer area, even though the angle are probably far too steep and too much aimed towards the exhaust port. And this will not be good for flow. Just for testing purposes, I think we should assemble without these in there and see what happens. B transfer ducts fully opened, except for that stuffer thing in the crankcase. Aimed far too much towards the exhaust port. Let's see what happens. We lost lots of power, like 2.5 horsepower, from removing those angle changing things. But we gained some volume too, so it could be the case volume. Pull the cylinder, 3D print some new angle changing stuffers, and grind a tiny bit off the transfer roofs. 0.3 millimeters, 0.32. After taking the whole hot end assembly apart and fixing everything was loose, and I had some thermal runaway errors. I think the thermistor wasn't registering temperature correctly, so lots of fails. But now, and I also printed these, but these would have had to be glued in. But these ones will have tabs, and I'm gonna, you'll see, grind some corresponding slots in the cylinder. So no more power this week. My fixed transfer angles actually ended up between the no inserts at all. So the like super wide, super steep transfers and the 90 degrees across the cylinder. So 90 degrees across cylinder produced 12.63 horsepower at the wheel, and the fixed angles produced, well, around like 11.1 or something. And then the fully open transfers were down at 9 and 9.3. So they called from school, and my oldest son has dislocated his shoulder or something, so I had to go pick him up. But we can't do more testing now. But I gotta do some thinking, more thinking. Maybe the super wide exhaust port has so much area as soon as it opens that it's impossible to run like 204 or 3 degrees of timing with it, that it just destroys the resonance. There's no resonance because there's such a high amplitude of the pulse like early, and so it doesn't. It might be that with such a wide exhaust port we'll have to go with low timing, but then we lose area. It might be that such a wide exhaust port is impossible. Might be. Really should try lowering it in some way. Not an easy task, because the transfers will follow. I started printing some stuffers to decrease case volume whilst running one of those inserts with less volume, just to keep everything the same and see if it was the volume change or the angle change of the rear transfer valve that made the difference. I've had some issues with the printer, so I've rebuilt the whole extruder assembly, and it seems to be working fine now. So we're printing a stuffer, but there is something fishy with my belt primary down to the second primary of the AM6 gearbox. Because now we're running a ratio of, I think, maybe 1 to 1.5. If I switch out to 1 to 1, I think we'll lose power. At least that's my experience so far. So we're going to do a baseline run now today with those angle changing stuffers in there, which didn't produce most power so far, but baseline, and then we'll switch out to this and make sure we run the same like RPM or the same roller RPM and see what the difference is, and if there's a huge difference, which I think there is. And I have a suspicion the whole thing here is, and we've talked about this before, but I'm suspicious of this. I think maybe at higher RPM we're really losing power, because losing like friction and power loss, torque loss so early when the engine is so weak. Like we're seeing 5.5 torque newton meters of torque on the wheel. So there's more in the engine, but say there's 10 newton in the engine, and this can easily eat up, like 10 newtons is not a lot, 5 newtons is not a lot, and it could be that this is just eating up all the power before it gets transmitted further. And the reason why this is important is because now I'm looking for big errors, like major mistakes, something major wrong. But if this is stealing most of the power, then we're really making good power, and we need to focus on the details and minor adjustments to gain power. So, okay, baseline run with this, then we'll switch out for this and see what the difference is. That's our baseline, and now let's switch out the pulleys here and see how it behaves. So 10.5 horsepower or something. If you see a major change here, major difference now, then there's definitely something going on with my with the transmission setup. Our first sign that this makes a huge difference, the losses here, would be that it doesn't want to get into the power band now with the added friction from this. I'm gonna add in a bunch more timing down low just to make it be able to. Just a bunch of timing down low to make it rev out properly. To have it enter the power band. You can clearly see the difference here now. Those 3 runs, that was with the smaller pulley, and these 3 runs with the larger one. And we lost like 3.5 horsepower from that pulley change. So what I'm wondering is how much horsepower is lost to this assembly altogether. Like if we were to delete this and have this directly driving the sprocket or the toothed wheel cog thing. Like if this was part of the AM6 engine and directly driving the clutch, how much less losses would we experience? Because it's a lot. Need to come up with something else and a different solution here, because I think this is stealing. And now there's no compression. I think, which is another clue to there being power here, because I think we actually melted a hole in the piston now, or snagged the ring or something. But I'm hoping not snag the ring and destroy the cylinder. We'll have a look. I think there's more power than what it seems because of this setup here. It really looks like that, because we lost 3.5 horsepower just by changing the ratio a little bit. So how much are we losing to this? Hopefully a lot. Let's have a look. This will be the end of the video, but let's first just have a look and see what happened here. If we melted a hole in the piston, I have a suspicion that's what happened. The plug gap is really large, so I think the electrode has started melting, and I'm pretty sure there's a hole in the piston. I can't feel a hole, so then it probably snagged the ring, and the cylinder might be destroyed. We snagged the ring. The rest of it is gone with the wind. No, there's parts of it stuck here. Plating does not look too happy, nor does the head. We've got some repairs to do and some transmission changes to do next time. See you next time.